morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our webinar on combating cybercrime, an essential guide for all online merchants, organized by the eCommerce Association of Ghana. Of course, you can find out more about the association by visiting our website. We are talking about this particular topic because it's very core to our success as online merchants. And we want to make sure that when our customers come and shop on our websites, they are secure in terms of making payments, in terms of receiving their goods. And a lot of the responsibility of this, of course, sits with the online merchants. So today we want to talk about the subject. It's a very big subject area. We cannot obviously cover all of it in 1 hour. So we are reining in to discuss the key areas of this topic. So we hope that you will find very useful and valuable information that will help you to go away and improve on your security and, of course, your prevention from cyber crime. In a moment, I will introduce our panel. Before then, I just want to let you know what's on the agenda, and then, of course, give you a very short intro into our eCommerce Association if you're engaging with our webinars for the first time. So on the agendas will be intros, then we'll have, excuse me, some synopsis. We'll have perspective from the panel, and then we'll move into questions and answers. Now, in order to focus the conversation, we have put together some questions that people had sent us and ones that we have also put together through our research. So as we go along, if you have questions, we will read them out. But if the panel have already answered, we may not repeat those questions, but I'll let you know if that should happen. Okay, so about the eCommerce Association, the mission really is to seek to shape a secure digital future for e-commerce growth and become the sole voice of all e-commerce companies selling goods and all services online while safeguarding the interest of all stakeholders in the industry. The eCommerce Association of Ghana has actually been in existence informally since 2013 and was officially founded in 2019, meaning registered, with the purpose of setting up standards, encouraging good practice, providing information, promoting the use of e-commerce, and making it a driving force for economic growth in Ghana. So whether you're an established e-commerce business in Ghana or you're still planning your journey into the commerce space, joining the e-commerce Association of Ghana opens the doors to much more greater knowledge, visibility, and success in the industry. We have good reasons why you should be members. I mean, since we started, we haven't actually done the formal launch because of COVID-19, but we've had lots of registrations and interest in being part of the association, which has been very encouraging. It's never easy when you're pioneering an area, especially an area that is developing. So there are good reasons to be members. We intend to make this association a modern association to do what we know we need it to do, like in other places. So there's good reason to join. So 6 I've got here for you. It's all around growth and promotion of your online businesses, data access and research. We intend to do quite a few of that. Advocacy, championing the industry, networking events, Zoom meetings, Zoom sessions, to try and bring some capacity building for those of you who are members and those in the space. Obviously, business missions and vision events. We are in business to make money. We have to look at opportunities to connect with other areas in order to ensure we can continue to do so. Some free discounts on industry events, conferences, seminars, paid webinars, etc. So these are some of the reasons why you should join. The annual membership fees for individual membership is $200. For SME members with 10 to 49 employees, it's $500, and then large enterprise membership with 50 to 249 employees plus is $1,000 for the membership. There are payment plan options available. We do know we're in a bit of a crisis time. We don't want finance to be a barrier. So of course, if you engage with us, we'll find a way out to work together in order for you to become a member. So that's just some background there on the e-commerce association. If you want more information, I'll have contacts at the end of the webinar. But if you visit the website, the information is there as well. Okay. So I'm Anita Riafi. I'm actually a board secretary of the e-commerce association of Ghana, and I'm your host for this webinar. I'm going to go over to each of the panelists to introduce themselves, and then we will get going. So I will start with you, Mr. Albert.
Morning. My name is Albert Bigger. I'm founder and CEO of ZubaShop.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm very pleased to be with you this morning. My name is Adoma Pepra, and I'm the country manager for Visa. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Philemon Heaney from eCrime Bureau. I'm a cyber analyst. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So if you're listening, you know you're in very good hands with our panelists. They are very knowledgeable, and we hope that by the end of this, you'd have gathered a lot from them. So we'll start with Philo to give us a synopsis, like a background, just to put us all into line as to what we're talking about. And then I'll move over to Albert and Adoma to also give their perspective, and then we'll start the discussion. So Philo, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. You wanted to share yours, right? So I'm stopping now. You can share yours. Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to keep it brief. So what I'll be talking about right now, my slides will be speaking to will be a general overview of online fraud since COVID-19, cyber attack against e-commerce platform, and also just touch base on some of the vulnerabilities that make this e-commerce platform vulnerable. When you look at the trend when it comes to cyber attacks, you realize that most of the attacks focus on online platforms such as, like, let's say, e-commerce and anything that is being delivered in a web-based form. And most of these e-commerce platforms are actually web applications that runs in the browser where we all access it. And to your surprise, you get to know that it is quite very easy for you to put such websites online to start delivering some sort of services to everyone to access. And as it stands now, in this current year, 2020, we have about an estimated amount of about 12 million to 24 million e-commerce websites out there on the internet, doing business, interacting with us everywhere. And once you have these platforms coming up, okay, it increases the attack surface. What I mean by attack surface is that the very avenues that the cyber criminals will use to compromise as it increases that surface. So it exposes everyone to cyber attacks. Why? Because people will be conducting business through this platform. And if you have people converging on this platform, exchanging their personal data and their financial information, then it becomes a lucrative point for cyber criminals to target. Because cyber criminals do not have to go and hunt the individual individually, but they just have to go to a centralized point, which in this case, an e-commerce platform target, and they have a whole lot of information to commit fraud. And as at, I guess, 2020, the fraud that have been recorded in various industries, realized that about 32.4% was attributed to the e-commerce sector. So what it means is that you have this percentage of the fraud or cyber attacks, okay, directing towards the e-commerce platform. And the reason being also is that during this pandemic, you realize that most businesses did not plan their business continuity to go online. But because of this pandemic, people have been forced to transact their business or to move their business to the online platform. And individuals have also been forced, people who do not even know much about the internet, they have all been forced to conduct business online or to purchase online to avoid contact. Hence, you realize that I did a bit of analysis with Alexa to see the traffic to some of the e-commerce website that we have in our country as compared to last year. And you realize that the traffic to this platform has increased significantly as compared to last year. That tells us that now a lot of people have changed their, their purchasing method from the traditional way of doing business to using the online platform. And once that's becomes the case, we have cyber criminals who are also at lockdown. What it means is that, everyone is at home. They have their internet access, they have their computer. And what do? Okay, you learn new skills. And by learning new skills, most newbie criminals or newbie people who are coming to, let's say, cybersecurity will be using this platform as a punching bag. So you might not have someone who deliberately want to hack your platform, but someone who is learning to hack, okay, or who has taken some computer courses or some course on Udemy, okay, they'll be using the platform to conduct their hands-on activities. And one thing that also has made this platform also a bit vulnerable to cyber attack is that most of the platform that are being used to serve the e-commerce activities are based on open source platforms. So you have platforms like Magento, you have platforms like WordPress, you have platforms like MegaCart. These are all platforms developed by people and is freely available out there. The codes are freely available out there. You just get it and put it online and you start doing your business. Okay, so if there is any vulnerability in any of this platform, it affects a lot of people. So as you can see on my screen here, I just highlighted on one of the incidents that was detected somewhere in July, where about 150 e-commerce stores were compromised in 55 countries. And out of these, the criminals were able to steal about a whole lot of credit cards, which generated them of a revenue of 6 million from all these e-commerce platforms. And there was just a simple attack. Why? Because this platform were using a common, e-commerce platform, which was freely accessible out there. And there was a small issue of vulnerability in it, which gave them the opportunity to be able to modify the codes to be able to log people's or users or customers' credit card whenever they go to the website. And this is just one single attack that I have just put on the slide. So the other attacks that has not been recorded here that affect the e-commerce platform, because this platform take our payment details, they take our personal information, and they are supposed to keep this information very secure in this regime of data protection where personally identifiable information has become like a gold mine. Okay, but to your surprise, tomorrow someone just give you a call and tell you that I want to do business online, and all of a sudden they start taking payment cards, they start taking mobile money, and the question is, how are they handling this data? What security mechanisms are being put in place? And you realize that most of them are doing nothing. They don't have any standard, no compliance to any best practices, and they are just organizing and doing their business online, which puts everyone at risk. And just to touch on some of the attacks that we have seen in the e-commerce industry, one notable attack that's I have here is the e-scheming. Okay, with the e-scheming, the cyber criminals just have to get into your e-commerce platform, say the website, modify the code, and every transaction that is being conducted, okay, a copy of that transaction, the details gets to them, and they use that to conduct further attacks. So say you enter in your payment details, that information is being captured and a copy is being sent to them. Okay, so your payments go through all right, but someone have copy of your payment details to commit other fraud. And we have other attacks such as SQL injection, where the criminals are able to use the front end of the, let's say, the web application to modify the database for their own gain. We have malware attacks, social engineering, which have become also very notable within the industry, where criminals will set up their business, but you make payment and they don't deliver you any product, or the product that you receive is different from what you saw online. We also have the card not present fraud, also where the criminals will also steal people's credit card and enter the details to make purchase. Because when you're shopping online, you don't need a physical credit card, you only need the details. So it becomes very easy for criminals to conduct card not present fraud. And another attack that we have seen in large scale is something that we call the card testing fraud. With the card testing fraud, the criminals will steal a bunch of credit card and use an e-commerce platform to test the credit card, the validity of the credit card or the payment card to see whether it is valid or not, either by shopping, let's say less than $1. Okay, so just to highlight some of the things, and I think my last slide here says highlight some of the vulnerabilities that have been exploited in the e-commerce platform, and this cuts across almost all the platform that we have seen on the market. Okay, some of them they have issues with authentication, they have issues with the access controls. They don't monitor anything. So if you go to, let's say, an e-commerce provider and you ask them, okay, from January to February, what are the attack trends? Okay, or who are targeting you? What is the modus operandi that the criminals are using? They are not able to tell you anything because they are just focused on transaction, they are just focused on money, and there's no visibility within their environment when it comes to cyber attacks. So it's a growing concern, especially within this period where we are preaching stay home, you know, you don't have anything to do, limit interaction, social gathering. And the best way is to deal with purchase online or access online platform to transact your business. So it's something that has to be carefully looked at and addressed when it comes to the cyber-related fraud around this area. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Philo. So if you drop your screen, then I can bring mine back up. Thank you. So I'll come over to you, Albert, for your perspective on what we on this whole discussion that we're having, and then we'll move over to Adema as well.
Oh, thank you. I think Phil has done a great job of covering the more like the technical side of the phenomenon of cybercrime. So I'm not exactly an expert as far as cybersecurity is concerned, and so my perspective would look at it more from an e-commerce merchant, and also possibly from a business point of view. So I just have a few thoughts to share. The first thing is that it's important how one looks at the whole conversation about cybercrime. It's estimated, statistical estimates that cybercrime will be valued at something like 6 trillion by 2021. So for all intents and purposes, one has to view the business or the ecosystem of cybercrime as an industry by itself. It's a business by itself, both from the criminal's perspective and also from the perspective of the service providers who are providing tools, products, etc., to combat cybercrime. So it's big business. Obviously, 6 trillion is not a small number. And then also, I find that when the conversation about cybercrime comes up, the focus is usually on financial or the financial losses that are incurred as a result of cybercrime. So for purposes of setting the tone for the conversation, I think we need to sort of expand that perspective to include the many other reasons or how cybercrime manifests itself. So definitely loss of revenue or financial benefits, depending on which side of the fence you sit, is at the forefront of cybercrime. But there are many other things that also are considered as cybercrimes. So I'll list a few. One of them is loss of traffic for merchants. The other is stealing of sensitive information of customers. The other is potential brand damage to your company. So the hacker may not necessarily seek to benefit financially from you, but may just simply want to damage your brand as a company. The other reason is obviously leveraging some kind of control and power. And we've seen it manifest itself in elections and many other things. And so power also sits at the heart of cybercrime. And then I just want to touch on the whole concept of how people view cybersecurity. I think for most merchants, especially the small to medium-sized merchants, they view it more as a threat to large businesses like the Yahoos and the Visas of this world. But cybercrime definitely has to be something that needs to feature in the planning of businesses, especially now, pre-COVID, post-COVID, where the online play has become such an essential part of our daily lives. It's important that everyone, both from an end user perspective and even from a business perspective, to consider cybercrime and cybersecurity as an integral part of your business planning and, of course, your disaster recovery. And so I liken it to, if you had a brick and mortar store, one of the essential things you do is you secure it, and you typically secure it with the security guards. And it's the same. You've just moved your business online. And so in this case, you need some kind of security. And so that is an essential part of your business planning, and as well disaster recovery. So those would be my initial thoughts. Like I said, it's a big business. It's a 6 trillion play, and therefore there's strong motivation for the ecosystem to keep it alive. But as businesses, we also need to sort of put in mechanisms to protect ourselves. I mean, later on in the conversation, I would want us to somewhat segregate the threats and the risks, because they differ significantly depending on whether you're small, medium, or you're a large enterprise. So when we get into the meat of the conversation, we can sort of be more specific. Thanks.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you very much for that. Adama, do you want to also give us your perspective on this before we get going?
Yes. Thank you, Anita. Philemon, you did a really great job. But some of the things that I was going to cover, you've already done so, and you did it in such a great way. So I just have a few thoughts and comments just in terms of what we have observed around online fraud. I'm going to give you just a general overview, just a couple of points, probably not extensive as Albert and Philemon. But it goes without saying that we've all seen an unprecedented acceleration of digital adoption throughout the industry and also broader society because of the COVID pandemic. We've also seen a drastic surge in both phishing and phishing. So phishing with a PH and phishing with a V. So this is really when fraudsters try and get sensitive information from you, utilizing the voice, which is phishing, and then via a link and to be able to try and extract sensitive information from you through a mail link. So that's phishing. And we've also seen social engineering attacks where people try and steal your personal consumer details, such as your password and your PIN. What we've also observed is the fact that there are actors that are targeting critical infrastructure sectors. The payments ecosystem has not been spared. Another thing that we've seen is that there has been an increase in the activity of cyber criminals that are deploying new malware samples that target financial institutions. I think Philemon spoke quite at length about that. And the biggest concern that we are hearing from small businesses, I mean, there's been a big focus from a Visa perspective around small businesses, is the fact that they are scared to take their business online because of cybersecurity. And unfortunately, it is what it is. You know, where the consumers go, fraudsters will follow. And so we've seen a similar shift in fraudulent activities and fraud attempts from in-store to online within the past few months. I think Albert's made mention of the fact that the same way that you've got to protect your physical store, you've got to protect it online. And we've seen the forces move with people from from the physical stores onto the online. So just our general review in terms of the fact that digital adoption has accelerated during this time, drastic surge in cybercrime and cybersecurity, and small businesses are scared. They, because they realize just how vulnerable things can be, and rightly so. So those are really some of the things that we are observing from a Visa perspective.
Thank you very much. I think one of the things that I would like to add from the human capital perspective is that also, just to add to what Albert said about looking at the other areas, when we discuss this topic, we kind of sometimes place the focus on just the external cyber criminal trying to get into our systems. But we have found from the human capital perspective, in terms of issues that we've been dealing with our clients when it comes to disciplinary and breaches, that some of these crimes are people who are working within the organizations are also committing these crimes, and that external people target some of the internal workers in order to be able for them to do some of these crimes as well. So I just want to make the point that you should also look at the people you're hiring, the internal securities you're putting in place to protect people's sensitive information, like Albert mentioned, and also the potential risk of your staff being compromised. I think I just wanted to add that bit in, that it's not always just coming from the outside. Some of these frauds also happen from inside. All right. Okay. So just to move on to some of the questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we begin to discuss these, we've put some questions together. If you have questions or a comment that you would want me to put to the panelists, please type it in the questions and answers box or in the chat if you find that easier, and then I will read the question out. If they've already answered the question, I may not repeat, in which case I will message you to let you know that it's already been covered. All right, thank you. So moving on, the first question here, I mean, we've touched on the background. I think we're all very aware of the conversation that we're having. But my first question is, like, are online store vendors really aware of the importance of security? Do they really understand it's their responsibility to ensure security, and are they taking it seriously? Before I come to you to answer, I'm asking this because you have the proper e-commerce providers who have got an e-commerce website who are actually managing it as such. But you also have a lot of people selling online, whether through their social handles, etc. And just as a customer engaging or seeing what goes on, their behaviors and the way people are even selling, whether it's on social platforms like WhatsApp, Instagram, or they are using different methods in order to manage their stores, security doesn't seem to be playing a very key aspect. It seems to be more the money they will get from what they are selling plays a key role, rather than am I making sure that the person purchasing from me is secure, or that what I am doing is safe. So this is why I'm asking this question, that our vendors, whether they are e-commerce or they're doing social commerce, are they really aware of the importance of security, and that do they understand is their responsibility? Perhaps maybe I'll start with you, Albert.
Yeah, Anita, I mean, that's an interesting question. And that's why in my intro, I sought to take sort of include other perspectives apart from the obvious, which is the financial or revenue loss associated with cybersecurity. So I think for most people, especially small to medium-sized merchants, and whether they're full-blown e-commerce website or their social commerce operation, I think the focus is on securing the cash or securing the cash during the transaction. And a lot of people don't avert their minds to all the other potential attacks, stealing of data, etc., etc. So there's an interesting, maybe an interesting experience I'd love to share. This is coming from one of my vendors online. And he shared what she shared with me that she had suddenly got an increase in break-ins in her home because obviously she was vending electronics and small gadgets. And I suspect that the source of the attacks were from people who suddenly knew that she had all these gadgets at home because she was obviously advertising them online. So while she did not get attacked directly online through her social commerce activities, she did get a physical attack because she was always out there putting up gadgets and also indicating how and where you can come pick up these gadgets. So obviously these criminals may have noticed that these gadgets will be in her house, and so she had gotten attacked a couple of times. So in a discussion with me, I suggested that maybe she wants to move the actual pickup of the items from her home to obviously she uses us as an e-commerce partner. So yes, we could secure these for her in our warehouses, and we could do the logistics for her. But also these are the other things that people don't avert their mind to. So to answer your question more specifically, I don't think that a lot of businesses, especially small merchants and vendors and small e-commerce companies, understand the magnitude of the threat posed by cybersecurity or quasi cyber, anything related with basically moving your business online. And as Adoma said, we're seeing a significant surge in the activities online. And as this happens, the threat will also increase exponentially. So businesses need to avert their mind more to the risk and the challenge posed by cybersecurity, and of course the opportunity as well that an increase in online activity provides. But it should be more central to their business planning and their disaster recovery. Those would be my thoughts.
Mm. What are your thoughts, Philo? Are you seeing that they are aware of the importance of security, or even taking it seriously?
What Albert said is right. When it comes to security, people look at security from various angles, depending on where you sit. You see security differently. Okay, people look at security as Albert mentioned, securing the money, making sure that you don't lose any money in any transaction. Okay, someone also look at security as the data that you collect. Okay, you make sure that the security of that data is ensured. But when it comes to the e-commerce sector, mostly it's more about securing the transaction. Okay, the finance, not looking at the data, not looking at the kind of fraud that people are conducting, especially the human manipulation aspect when it comes to social engineering. Okay, they don't address these issues, and it's like it's an issue that some of them are not even aware of it, because if you look at how even the platform, okay, is developed and the framework that they run, mostly a developer sitting somewhere is the one who will be outsourced to put up the system. And per my experience with working with developers when it comes to security, they don't think about the security aspect of the system. They only think about features, okay, to make sure that the requirements of the client are met. So it goes way beyond. It starts from the ground, from the developers, the people who put together the requirements. And when you look at all the requirements, you realize that security is missing. So at the end of the day, the final product, the business model that they are running, does not have security in place. There's no business continuity, as it's also said. There's no business continuity. So if something happened to the platform right now, they don't even know how to, restore, how to bounce back, and it becomes very difficult. So in terms of security, yes, I wouldn't say they are not aware of it, but what they are looking in terms of security is not comprehensive to give that assurance to customers. So that is what I can say about this.
What are your views on this, Adoma? What do you see from this perspective?
Anita, I think that. Sorry about that. I don't know, there's some interference. Anita, I think that when a small merchant starts a business, right? They are so concerned with so many different things. There are various facets to the business, It's the working capital management, it's the sourcing, it's the packaging, it's the supply chain, all of that. And I think people can be so overwhelmed with doing that they forget security is a very big, important aspect of it. In our view, that's one of the things that has been missing. But as I said as well, it's because people are scared, and a lot of people are saying, oh, it's a big concern of mine, but also I'm not entirely sure how to always try and tackle it. So I agree with my fellow panelists, both what Albert and Philemon has said, that it needs to be a key part of it, but people are not paying the right attention to it because they're so focused on other aspects of getting the business off the ground that they forget about the security element of it. Or perhaps they may not necessarily know what they need to do to secure themselves from a security perspective, and they're not entirely sure who to go to get these expertise. So I think these are some of the challenges that merchants that are looking to go online are facing.
Mm. So we're saying here that really, if you're listening and you're a merchant, you do need to prioritize this as part of your business planning because it is fundamental to the success of your store.
Anita, if I can just add further, I will share some tips. I've got like 6 tips that merchants can utilize to try and secure themselves, and hopefully that will help the merchants.
Okay, we'll come to that. We'll come to the tips very, very soon. Now, I wanted to also ask, insofar as we're talking about the merchants, customers are also there. So I wanted to ask, who's responsible? Like, if a customer becomes a victim of fraud, for example, in using their cards on your store, or for internal fraud, where maybe sensitive data is actually stolen. Like, who's responsible for addressing that? So would it be like, say if I've become a victim of fraud using my card on a store, would it be the store? Would I hold the store responsible? Would I report it to my bank? Like, how does it work? Like,
yeah, let me take that one. So all cardholders have something called a chargeback right. So if they suspect fraud, or if, for example, they order things and it's not delivered, or what they ordered is not what came out, or what they received, they have the right to dispute that transaction. And so what normally happens is that you will raise a chargeback with your bank, and the bank investigates. So let me give you a classic example. So it happened to me one evening where, and it's so important to have alerts. Happened to me one evening where at about midnight, or just after midnight, I got an alert, which I thought was pretty odd. So I checked it, and it was somebody that was trying to do an online fraud using my card. So they must have been able to get it through phishing or something. And so what they do is that they try like little amounts first, right? So they'll try, say, $2 to see whether it goes through, and then they will start with a bigger. Luckily, I was able to see that alert, and I immediately called my bank. And what we did is we blocked the card so that they weren't able to do further transactions on utilizing the card number. So it is, the card holder has the right to dispute the claim. So it's best for them to do it. They raise it with their bank, and the bank investigates. And through the investigation, whoever is found at fault, the merchant's bank will then credit the issuer's bank, so the cardholder's bank. And so that's what's settled. And the chargeback rights run for quite a few months, so you have quite a few months to try and settle something like that. And it's usually handled by the 4 teams in the respective banks. So basically the onus is on you, the customer, to try and get stuff sorted, because it's you try to make a purchase utilizing your card and something happened. And so, it'll be on you to try and get it resolved. But also, I know we're speaking about consumers, but also we're speaking about merchants, but the consumers have such a big role to play in this. As I mentioned, it's important that consumers have alerts running on their phone, so that if you get notifications that you realize are not correct, you challenge that, or you look into it, right? And also shop from trusted websites. I'm sure all of us know about making sure that where you shop, there's a secure link with a padlock, And also, folks must just never share their PIN, use strong passwords. These are all simple tips that customers and cardholders can utilize in order to protect themselves from fraud.
Mm. Do
Sure.
you
So
think?
just to add,
Mhm.
yeah. Also, just to add up to what Anita has just said, I think a big part of the responsibility is the customers and essentially doing due diligence. I always give this example where if a customer were wanting to buy a car, they will probably go to the garage a couple of times, go with the mechanic, go with the girlfriend, go with the friend, etc., before they make a final purchase decision. So it beats my mind how people get scammed online of a few thousands of CDs because somebody had said that the car they wanted to buy is in Kumasi and that they should pay a deposit of 4,000 or 5,000 and then the car would be driven to Accra. It would seem clearly to me that the customer didn't do any basic common sense of a due diligence, because even when you could physically see the car, you put in mechanisms to protect yourself, let alone when the transaction is online. So there's a big part of the responsibility that falls on the customer's head, shopping from reputable websites, etc., etc. But Adama touched on something which for me somewhat is a bit of a raw nerve. And she and I have had reason to take up this conversation.
Albert.
In fact, Albert, before you say yours, I just want to tell her that I had an incident with my card, and what she just said, mine stopped at notifying the bank. The bank never said anything about investigation or anything. So,
well, look,
Anita, we need to speak
in fact,
offline.
they were trying to make me feel like, have I forgotten? Maybe it's my fault. And I'm thinking, no, I've noticed purchases on my account that I have not made, and I'm very diligent on my account. But it was just block the card, and there was no direction or anything about invest. It was just kind of pushing it on me. So I've noted the steps of the bank to investigate, to identify who's at fault, and then based on that, then the crediting happened. I never got to this third and fourth step. So thank you for that. But Albert, yes, go on with your point. Sorry.
So look, to be honest, my view is that the responsibility is a shared one. So I started by saying customers need to be careful. They need to do a bit more due diligence, and they need to understand the space they are playing in and taking the necessary precautions. But I was talking about chargeback and raw nerve because for us as merchants, we're sitting at the shortest end of the stick. Because what happens is when a transaction is happening, it is not us as a merchant that is actually collecting the details and validating the transaction. It's very likely a Visa or a payment gateway of some sort. The problem, however, is that when there's suspected fraud or there's a report for fraud, it is the merchant that loses the revenue for up to 180 days until the investigation is complete. So it is the equivalent of, I'm not the one that you put in charge of your security at home. But when you got back home and you had lost a watch, you're asking me to pay for it. And I think it's somewhat unfair. I suspect that it's also because as an industry here on this continent, we're still in its infancy and managing all of the considerations from cybersecurity. But I think this is a conversation that should happen. We need to understand clearly what each individual ecosystem partner's role is and what they need to do to protect both the consumer and the merchant. So for us, I mean, at Zuba-Shop, for example, one of the things we do is that even when our payment gateway provider has said to us that a transaction has been validated and that we can go ahead and process, we still flag them if we suspect that there's something wrong. And again, this is our added responsibility as a partner. So for example, a guy orders 3 iPhones, payment gateway says payment has been processed, everything is fine, go ahead and deliver. But we will flag that and go back to the payment gateway and say, guys, yes, I know you said it's good to go, but can you look at it again? Because it's an unusual request. Nobody orders 3 iPhones, or nobody orders 4 MacBook Pros, or something like that. Or sometimes you can also tell from the IP address. The IP address is coming from, let's say, Ghana, but it's masked through a VPN to come from somewhere. So all of those kinds of things are things that we see that we can pass on to our partners, and then our partners should also obviously recurrently advise and train us on the new methods, the new schemes, the new loopholes, to sort of protect everybody. So it's an ecosystem, and we all should somewhat be responsible. I just think that we as merchants sit at the short end of the stick, and it's the Visas and the Adomas that tend to make all the money.
Albert, you and I need to unpack this.
Anita, I think I also want to add something to this. Okay, it's something that we have been dealing with at the bureau. People get compromised and they come to us to conduct an independent investigations to see who is liable. And mostly the merchant will put this on the customer. But, you know, you can look at it from different angle, where maybe the customer shop online and his card has been intercepted by someone on a network, and that card was used to commit fraud. In this case, you realize that the merchant does not have anything to do about this because you went to your network to use it and someone around you intercepted this. But in some cases, the information goes there, and let's say your personal details have been compromised from the e-commerce platform. And these details have been used to conduct a stage 2, let's say, fraud or attack somewhere. So you realize that the attack here is not direct. Okay, the information was obtained by compromising, let's say, the e-commerce website. They had access to your database, and maybe they pick your details. And based on that details, they were able to, let's say, access your email account and were able to conduct certain fraud. So in this case, clearly, you require investigations to be able to know the source of the attack. If you're able to determine the source of the attack, then you'll be able to say that the merchant is liable or the customer is liable. And in most cases, it's a black box because, see, you don't know. It's sometimes difficult to go to the, let's say, the e-commerce, the service provider to do an investigation to be able to detect that. In some cases, too, they hide everything and you'll not be able to get the evidence that you are looking for. So most customers, what they normally do is that they report the case to the police, and the police, based on their maybe a court order or something, will mandate the merchant to provide certain information for investigations to be contacted. But it doesn't just happen. Okay, it's a process and it takes time. But in any case, an investigation has to be conducted to be able to establish that.
Okay, so what I got from this is that it's a shared responsibility. So, and in that, the customer also has to do the basics. And I think Adama gave some tips there in terms of password, using sites that are secure, making sure that you're not sharing your PIN. So there are also things that customers can do. And I'm just wondering if we're saying it's a shared responsibility, does that mean as merchants, we also have to educate our customers? So if we're sharing newsletters and information on our social hooks, should we also be giving tips on being secure or safely shopping on our sites or shopping online, even to try and educate the customers as well? Because as somebody said, humans are humans. But I think what we're saying here is a joint responsibility. So each stakeholder has a role to play.
Okay. And Anita, we cannot exclude the security agencies and the regulators from the ecosystem of partners, because I'm not sure what it is today. Maybe Philemon can speak more. Philemon can speak more to it. That I remember when we launched in 2013, this was a big problem. The technical capability of the police at the time was woefully inadequate to be able to even have a conversation about a potential or an actual attack. And I think one of the things that's fueling cybercrime is the fact that, like Philemon said, because it's somewhat of a black box operation, it's really, really difficult to pin where the source of the attack is, which makes it difficult by extension to prosecute. And once you're not prosecuting and people are not being punished for the crime, then there's a big incentive, because they know that what will typically start as an investigation and maybe being questioned here and there will end up with nothing, because there's really nothing that they can pin on the guy. So maybe a second level of the conversation is whether or not we even have adequate laws to be able to prosecute. Because, for example, what would qualify as evidence in a court of law would an email or proof of you having accessed the particular server be enough evidence for a judge to convict? So those would be what I would call the second level of the conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. Do we even have?
Yeah, I would say yes. Currently, we have the laws are there because we have the Electronic Transaction Act, we have the Budapest Convention, also that seeks to address cyber-related issues. And just, I think early this month.
Is it working, Philo? I think that's what. Is it working? We have the acts, we have many acts, but is it working?
Yes, I would say.
We just came from the perspective of saying that merchants, when people start their shops, they're mainly focusing on the other things other than the security. But there is an act, you're saying. So is it working? Are people aware of this act?
Yes. 2 years ago, I would say it wasn't really working, but now I can say it's working. Just early this month, eCrime Bureau, the UNICEF project, assisted the CID to build, I would say, a state-of-the-art forensic laboratory. You can go and verify yourself. Now they have the tools, they have the equipment, and the staff there are undergoing training, proper training to be able to handle cyber-related issues. Because in the past, when the issues are detected and law enforcement is involved, it was difficult for them to investigate. But prosecution requires evidence, and if there's no evidence and the criminal knows that law enforcement do not have the capability, they keep on, committing this fraud. But now, as we are talking now, there's capacity building ongoing from the law enforcement perspective, and I'm sure that will also come in strongly to reduce the amount of fraud that we see when it comes to cyber-related activities.
Okay.
Anita, can I just step in quickly? I know we're running
out of time.
Going
to say, I want you to kind of be first on this particular question.
Yes,
because I know you have to go.
Yeah, but quick one though, just in terms of what Albert and Philemon were saying as well. So we realized that from our perspective, there are so many different stakeholders. And so what we started doing is last year, we had an engagement with a whole segment of law enforcement, prosecutors, people from the financial crime investigation, where we spoke to them about cybersecurity and online fraud in particular, in terms of some of the trends that we're seeing, what are some of the things that they can do to assist in terms of helping to catch perpetrators, trial them, etc. So our education is extending beyond that as well, because as Albert mentioned, the knowledge gap has been there, but we're trying to see how we can try and bridge that. So I thought I should mention that.
Philo, could you just repeat those acts again, just in case we want to go and check it out before we start question 3, which I'll start with. I don't know.
Yes.
Those acts.
Electronic Transaction Acts, then the Budapest Convention.
Okay, so repeated for all of you to go and check out. Right. Okay. So this is an issue, the infrastructure, but Philo assures us that something has. I think we know of the center. We're even trying to see how we engage to find out a bit more about how that whole center is working.
Yeah.
So I guess you'll be able to help us with that. Okay. So on to the next question, which is what security measures should an online store have in place when it comes to the website, payments, and delivery? Now, I want to go to Adama first because she has to leave us at 11. So I want to start with you on what, what should they have in place? Yeah.
I have 6 tips, so I don't know. I really would try and like to explain it in detail, but we may not have the time. So what I can do is maybe I'll share that with you, Anita, after the webinar, so you can showcase it with your members. So number 1 is use fraud detection software. There are lots of really, really cool fraud detection systems out there, from basic fraud scoring to modern machine learning software. When used in conjunction with strong internal practices, it can really help to reduce fraud risk and automate the task. A second one I want to talk about is use the card verification code, or CVV2 fraud prevention. So now, with the card, right, the 3 numbers at the back of it is known as a card verification number. Well, that's how we refer to it from a visa perspective. The other people call it different. Other schemes may call it something different. The point is, use the functionality in your website payment processing to ensure that you record a card verification code for all purchases. It just really helps in terms of trying to protect yourself. Another point I want to make is critique the bill to and ship to address. Now, it's very true that a lot of legitimate orders have different bill to and ship to addresses. For example, if I want to buy, I don't know, R&R luxury for a friend of mine, even though I'm paying for it, the shipping address will be different because I'm sending to my friend's home. So that happens. But card thieves, what they do is that they overwhelmingly use a different ship to address. So critique these orders closely, especially those where there's a lot of very high CD values. And then lastly, awareness, right? One of the most important tools to make sure that you develop individual awareness intuition about the online orders received. Use a critical eye and a practical mind. When you finding that you're in doubt about something, seek a second opinion. And then last point, and I'll share the others, is use of something called Visa Secure. It's a second factor authentication, which provides a layered and proactive control against fraud. The solution helps merchants reduce their fraud and dispute claims against them. So, Albert, I think you and I should be talking about this. And yeah, that's really it. I mean, like I said, there's 6. I can share the others with Anita.
Okay, that's great. When you share, we'll share it with them as well. But that's really good points there in terms of what you should be having in place, if for your store. Albert, you have a store, so any measures you want to share here? Is he gone off? Okay, Albert may have gone off.
Oh, you're there. I'm sorry, I was on mute. So yeah, so I would actually like to go very rudimentary with my suggestions. I believe Adoma has shared a few essential ones, and I'm sure our expert panelists will also share some tips. But especially for SMEs, I think my first advice would be selecting the right platform. This is where a lot of merchants get it wrong. So I liken it to buying a bus because you pick up your nieces every so often to go to church. You just have 3-4 kids, but because you pick up your nieces, you go and buy a 10-seater. Obviously, that's a waste of resources. But at the same time, we're basically sizing it right. Now, in picking a platform, there's a balance between, on one extreme, picking a platform that's entirely managed by a third-party service provider, which means you don't have to do anything. The service provider focuses on the platform, keeping it up, security, firewall, everything, and you just sell your wares. So that's one extreme, and then you pay like a monthly subscription. The other extreme is to essentially develop, build, and own your own platform. That obviously has benefits, but also that has challenges. So especially for SMEs, when you're starting out, and like Adoma mentioned, as an entrepreneur, your focus is really not on cyber crimes and all of those things. It's on raising capital, it's on sourcing goods, it's on building a loyal customer base, retention, staffing, regulatory issues. You don't want to add platform and cybersecurity issues to your headache. So typically my recommendation is, if you're starting off, especially if you're small, to go for one of those, what I call managed services. And every one of the e-commerce providers have one, whether it's BigCommerce, Shopify, there are a host of them, where essentially yours is just to go and set up an account, put up your wares, and your service provider manages everything else. They manage security, they manage backups, they manage disaster recovery, practically everything on the technical side of things, so that you just focus on they focus on the E, and you just focus on the commerce side of things. So for me, the number one tip would be choose the right platform. And your choice of platform is obviously a function of what is the size of your company, how much resources do you have internal capacity to be able to secure your own site, or you need extra help, your level of threat, etc. So tip number one would be pick the right platform for your size or for your specific or your peculiar needs. That's tip number one. Tip number two is that don't take on liability that really does not belong to you, quote unquote, as I put it. So for example, even as large as we are as an e-commerce company, we do not process card payments by ourselves. And the simple reason is that we don't want to take on that liability, because the minute we start processing card transactions, it means that one, we're collecting customers' database or card details. We need to put in extra investment in firewalls and security, et cetera, et cetera. It also means that the liability is entirely ours. So what we would typically do is we'll partner a payment gateway provider or a payment aggregator, or a Visa or a bank, and they do the processing, and they essentially just tell us when the payment has been processed, and we go ahead and do delivery. So now tip number two, don't take on liability that you really don't have the capacity to, or you really don't need to be taking. So that will be tip number two. And tip number three is that, and this goes to both the consumer and to the merchant. If it's too good to be true, it probably requires you to take a second look at it. If as a merchant you receive an order for 8 Apple notebooks, yes, you want the revenue, but you probably need to take a second look at it. Or as a customer, if you go on a site and the vendor says buy one get one free, and they're selling a Note 10, a Samsung Note 10, at what the market price is, which is maybe, I don't know, 3,000, 4,000. And they're still saying that if you buy one, you get one free. If it's too good to be true, take a second look at it. It probably has something in there. Tip number four would be, again, both for the merchants and the customers, for all the platforms, etc., that you use, choose a secure password. And please don't do the password 1234, last name 1234. Choose something that's more secure, and make a habit of changing it frequently. So if it's every month, every 2 months, every 3 months, make a habit of changing this frequently. And then for the merchants will also be use legal licenses for platforms or software that you use, because that is usually a big source of where all of this comes from. So instead of using a crack version or an illegal license, use a legal, properly licensed platforms, because that's the only way you'll get the support that you require. And then, of course, once you're using legal licenses, you'll get updates to the platform engines frequently, because again, it's a $6 trillion business. And so every day, the hackers, the thieves, the developers are looking for new ways to bypass the system. And so the platform owners are also always releasing patches to sort of deal with the threats that they pose. And so updating your engines frequently is a key part of staying safe. And that obviously comes from having legal software licenses. So I have a host more, but I guess I'd give Phil an opportunity to also chip in.
Thank you, Albert. Before Phil comes in, Adam, are you still here with us? Has she gone? Okay, she has gone. She had to leave at 11, so she has left us. Okay, so
sorry, I am still
here. Are you still here?
I am still here. Yes, I am still here.
Can we still carry on, or you have to go?
I have to go, unfortunately. I just wanted to just not disappear.
Okay, yes, I wanted to thank you. That's what I was checking as well. So I want to thank you so much for your time. We know you're very busy, and we've really appreciated your insights that you've provided. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure it won't be the last time you'll be joining us.
No, definitely not, Zenitha. Thank you so much to you and Paul for the invitation. I really enjoyed the conversation. Albert and Philemon will engage further. I think there's a lot that we can do to collaborate together as well. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Keep safe, everybody. Take care then.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Okay, over to you, Philly. Sorry.
Yes, sure.
Your points before we move on.
Yeah, I think Albert and Adma has done a great job in outlining some of the tips, but I also add it's something to it from the broader perspective. One thing that we should be looking at too is the computers and the devices that we use to access this platform. It could be an outsourced platform that you are using. Let's say an institution is taking care of the other aspect of it, but you are using computers to access this platform. So you should make sure that these computers are up to date. You have a good antivirus running on them. You have an information and cybersecurity policy. Okay, it doesn't have to be very voluminous, but a policy that will set the direction as to the do's and don'ts within the environment. And when that is being done, you have to make sure that you focus on the people, you focus on the technology, and of course, the processes should also be captured as to what should be done. Okay, you also have to make sure that you use encryption solutions so that when you import, let's say transactions, you import sensitive information from this platform, you don't just keep them like that on the desktop or in that folder. You keep them encrypted so that in case someone have access to your system, they will not be able to access it. Okay, the other thing is that in relation to the emails that we use, because it's very easy for someone to compromise your email and go to the platform and request for example, password to access your administrative control. So you make sure that with your email account, you have two-step verification or something that people call two-factor authentication. So that in case your email is compromised, okay, without having access to your mobile device, the attacker will not be able to have access to your account. So that should also be done. Then the other bit is your IT security itself for the network. Yeah, sometimes it's overwhelming as an e-commerce or a provider to manage the security. So you can also outsource that aspect of it if you think you don't have the capacity within to manage.
Carry on, Philo. It's normal in these times. Carry on.
Sorry, my alarm.
That's okay. You carry on.
So that can also be outsourced, okay, to have a third party, have a visibility within your environment. Sorry, I have to kill this alarm. It's making so much noise here.
Okay. All right. So far from the tips that we've been given, they're very, very useful. Actually, the key aspect of it is that you do need to have quite a number of these things in place. Albert mentioned the selecting the right platform, which I totally agree with. And then, of course, Adoma's key one I took is using fraud detection software. And then she told us quite a bit about the whole card verification code and so on. I think Philo was coming from the perspective of the devices that people are using. Perhaps this may form part of what we discussed earlier about educating our customers on being safe online. Also the devices that they are using, making sure that the antiviruses are also up to date. This is all part of them protecting themselves. And then of course on our side, having policies and procedures that we make sure that we've educated our employees to also be aware, to make sure that they are also not causing us any liabilities. And then the other key one Albert mentioned was about not carrying liabilities we don't have the capacity to do or we don't actually need to. So he made a point of having a payment merchant partner who may do all the processing and carry all the kind of risk or liability in doing so rather than you trying to do it yourself. I agree with him on selecting the right platform because these platforms will manage a lot of these things. And will save you a lot of the troubles of what we're talking about. The right platform is very key here. All right, okay. So we'll move on. Phil, are you back? We'll move on to.
Yes.
Okay, right. So did you want to add anything? We can move on to talk about the common e-commerce fraud in Ghana.
Yes, we can move on.
Yeah. So we know you kind of, we've been talking about this. I know in the beginning you kind of mentioned lots of different types of fraud, but is it possible to kind of know from you and perhaps from Albert, from the retailer's perspective, what are the common types of fraud happening in Ghana? So to help us to kind of, be aware of and obviously put our prevention measures in place to protect our customers and, of course, our online businesses.
Hello. Yes. So I will take it from the kind of cases
Maybe
that we have.
The top 5 or the top 3.
Okay. So one of them is the card not present fraud. Okay. What do you mean by card not present fraud is that people using other means to steal people's payment card details and using that one to shop online. So it's either they buy the card from the dark web, okay, where criminals steal their cards from different sources and sell it in as cheap as $4. You can get a Master or a Visa card to buy. So this criminals goes there and they purchase these cards. And once they purchase their cards, they go to the online platform and they make purchases from this. And mostly it goes through because, especially if the card is a Ghanaian card and they are shopping in Ghana, sometimes the fraud detection mechanisms are not able to pick it up and it goes through. So we see a lot of this fraud coming through. The other kind of fraud that we see happening here is something we call the social engineering. The social engineering is just a trick manipulating people. So we see that, like for instance, some people impersonate some of the notable e-commerce websites and send mass email to potential buyers telling them that they are running a promo. Okay, 50% discount, and you can only get it from the online site. When you come to the shop, you're not going to get it. So it entices people to follow that deceptive emails or text messages. So they click on it, they take them to a fictitious website, they go through the process and they are being compromised. So this is some of the attack that we have seen. An attack that we saw, which is not quite prevalent here, is an account takeover, where someone was able to compromise one of the administrators of the e-commerce platform's credentials, and they were able to change the prices of goods. So if the item was, say, 50 Ghana cedis, they were able to apply some discount to bring it as cheap as possible, and the purchases were made. But this is not something that we have seen very often. It's something that we saw, I think, some few months ago. Okay, so, and the other thing that we have also seen is stealing people's email accounts. Okay, what the criminals were able to do was, for some reason, they were able to compromise their e-commerce platform because they were not, as Albert said, most of the e-commerce platforms do not handle the payment themselves. They have a payment gateway that process the payments. So you realize that the only information they will keep is maybe the username and password of the customer. So when the database was accessed, they were able to extract the email accounts. And in the cybercrime community, they call those email accounts. It can be in thousands, 2,000s. You see, 3,000, and they call it leads. And they sold them to other marketers. So these marketers will use these ones as a lead to target you with other advertisement. Through that, they also put it on sale for to some other cyber criminals who will also send you mass emails with either advertisement or malicious content. Okay, so these are some of the attacks that I can highlight on this webinar. Yes.
Okay. Albert, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I guess Phil has captured it pretty succinctly. So no, I don't.
Okay, I think we've covered this one, security. Now, Adama mentioned about having a security detection, having a fraud detection software on your site. So I kind of want to ask, how large is the market for these detection and preventative software, and are they affordable? Because when things are a bit expensive it kind of affects people in patronizing or actually implementing these things. So perhaps maybe I'll start with you, Philo, on this one. Like how what's available? Is it affordable? How large is this in our market?
I'll just be very honest with you. Security is quite expensive. Okay, and maybe that's the main reason why small and medium enterprises will not want to spend so much money on security because it will end up, affecting the bottom line. Yes, because some of this security controls or technology is expensive. So
but does that mean that security companies like yourselves need to kind of look at options that, yes, we understand is expensive, but options that may be affordable for the smaller retailers, but that also does the job? Because I mean, with everything, there's always different levels. And I think I'm assuming based on what Albert said about, for example, the platform you choose should be based on your size, your resources, etc. I'm assuming security can evolve with your shop as it grows. So you may be able to start from a certain level and then increase, the amount as your shop grows, or as the demands for your shop comes. Then you have to increase, or it does not work like that. So that we don't just kind of say it's expensive, which now becomes like a barrier as to why I don't have a fraud detection or prevention software. Are there, can it be approached that way?
When it comes to security in terms of technology solutions, okay, there are technology solutions for medium-sized enterprises. There are technology solutions for large enterprises also. But depending on what you want to address, you see, when you look at security, the security ecosystem, you don't look at just technology, as I said, you look at even the human aspect of it. And in terms of addressing the human weakness, education could be key, which is less expensive, or awareness. For instance, you organize training, okay, which is quite cheaper than buying security solutions. I made mention about the policies and the guidelines that you have to develop to ensure that people know the right way of doing things when it comes to security. So there's that aspect of it also. Then we have the technology solutions itself. So these technology solutions are supposed to address certain aspects of your security needs. So for a small, let's say, entity, yes, based on, you just don't go in and buy security solutions. Otherwise, it becomes very expensive. So my advice is that you have to conduct an assessment on your environment. Okay, once you conduct the assessment, you know the threat that your business is exposed to. Okay, based on that threat, it will inform you as to the kind of security controls you should put in place. For instance, it's very easy to say buy a fraud detection solution. But when you buy the fraud detection solutions, you will be surprised that you implement that solutions and it will not work. Okay, but mostly what we normally do is that the assessment is being done. You know the threats that you're exposed to. You're able to know the risks that comes with when these threats are being realized. Okay, you know the risk that comes with it. Then based on that, a befitting security controls can be purchased. But most of the time, most institutions do it the wrong way. Okay, because they have heard that, let's say Zuba Shop, which is quite big, has bought this security control. They also want to buy that same security control. And in most cases, if you go to the manufacturer to say that I'm a small enterprise and scale it down, they are not able to do that. But there's also another market that serves your small organizations. So you can get that equivalent security technology and also implement. So to be able to implement security in a budget-friendly manner, you have to conduct a thorough assessment and know the threats that you are exposed to. Okay, for instance, you want to identify transactions that don't match the cardholder's country. Okay, yes, there's a solution to implement that. Depending on the volume of transaction that you have, will also inform how much you have to pay to analyze those transactions. So yes, it can be tailor-made or customized to suit the institution, but technology alone is not going to address it. So the takeaway is that you look at these three things that I've mentioned earlier. You look at the human aspect of it, because people are going to manage your businesses. You also look at the processes. Then you also look at the technology solutions. So by looking at it from these three angles, you will be able to have that assurance that the security adequacy of the organization is okay.
Right. Albert, did you want to add anything to that? I think Albert's on mute. I wanted to say to ask Philo. I mean, when you use the other platforms, so like Wix or Shopify or eCommerce, etc., they provide quite a large number of the protection of the e-commerce site.
Yeah.
So would we be talking about, in addition to what they are already providing, when we talk about the fraud detection and prevention software? Because I know they do a lot of that when you are running your stores on their platforms. So would this be in addition, or would it be covered? I mean, we're going to do some analysis on all of these, the top leading ones, and share that information with our members. But I'm just asking, outside of our members deciding, okay, I want to use eCommerce, I want to use Wix or whatnot, would they still need to look at fraud detection and prevention software as well as an impact? Yeah.
So
maybe I bet you take that.
As your back,
let me just chip in.
Yeah.
My call. So first off, to contextualize the conversation, we're having a conversation about cybersecurity in Ghana, and we're talking about merchants in Ghana. So first off, I find it very hard to believe that any e-commerce company in Ghana today, I mean, considering size of the market and the size of the business, should be running an operation where they entirely develop and own the platform, and they're entirely responsible for their own security. So again, my recommendation is to go for some kind of managed service.
Yeah.
The scale of managed service spans from essentially where everything is managed and all you're doing is just selling your wares, to where maybe you have servers that are managed, your database that's managed. So there are several permutations and options.
Yeah.
But the key, which is to the question that you asked now, the key is that a service provided by anyone that absorbs you merchant any responsibility for security. There is never. Suddenly can put your feet in there. So there's still some responsibility that you need to take as a chance. So it might be things having antivirus, tools or products on your computers, etc., etc. So I'm not sure there's a yes or no answer to whether this is on top of whatever your service provider is giving you, because the services vary from provider to provider. The important thing to understand is that, especially when you're small, pass that on to reputable third-party service providers so that you only have to deal with the basics of security, things like passwords, things like having antivirus on your PCs, and things like that. And then your service provider deals with the bigger things like DDoS attacks, attacks peculiar to that particular platform, updates, disaster recovery, backup, and all those kinds of things. That, for me, could be a major distraction from you as a business owner. Your real core business is really to be focusing on the commerce side of things. You don't want to spend all your time aiming to become a security expert like Phil. Your core business is really to run the commerce side of things. So maybe you should stick there and have other people sort of support you in the cybersecurity side of things. But again, let me emphasize that even in that case, the responsibility is not completely ceded. There's still some kind of responsibility that you have to take. Similar to if you have a house and you even had 10 security guards, there's still some kind of security responsibility that you have to take.
So what we're saying is that the managed service by a reputable third party would cover quite a bit, but you still do have a responsibility to cover maybe the areas they don't cover, or additional, just because, like you said, they may not be able to cover, or you can't just completely give the responsibility to someone else. And that's where you need a philo or etc. to help with maybe those other aspects, is what we're saying. Right?
Exactly. Even on the commerce side of things, there are still things that you need to take care of. For example, and anybody who runs an e-commerce business will grapples with this if your platform is not very sophisticated. For example, you run a promo that says for, let's say, 10 days, you're doing buy one, get one free. And in that list of buy one, get one free, you have 61 items. Now, when the buy one, get one free promo ends, for one reason or another, either because you did it manually or whatever, for one reason or another, you revert back to the original prices, but you forget 2 products. So those 2 products are still online at the promo price. Your customers, obviously, if they're intelligent and can fish those deals out, can then buy it even when the promo has ended. So again, the security responsibility, yes, you concede the big technical ones to people who are more competent to handle it, but there are still a lot of things, even on the commerce side of things, that you need to worry about. So security should form an essential part of your business planning and your disaster recovery.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. So I think we've got a lot of insights on there around, you know, the security. I think we can see from the conversation that it's key. Like, you can't ignore it. If you're serious about your commerce business, you've got to prioritize your security. Now, I'm asking here, you know, what is anticipated impact of fraud for online merchants in Ghana? I think, or Africa now, and I think we were asking, like, let's say around 2024, like, what, any insights there from you, Philo, or as you monitor these things? Any insights you can share here?
I would say that because of the pandemic, you know, it has presented an opportunity for everyone to think about, you know, putting some aspects of the business online. So I wouldn't be surprised to see from next year that even a tomato seller will be, you know, putting his or her product online for marketing. And one thing that is going to happen that I see from my end is that we are going to see a lot of surge in cyber attacks from that environment. Okay, because you know, most developers have also started developing their own customized platform and putting it up there, which is competing with what is currently in the market. Okay, but one thing that you should know is that some of the systems that are already there has a huge community behind it, as Albert said. Either it is being managed by a third party, a proprietary, maybe service, a licensed platform, or it's an open source platform, which also have a huge community behind it who also take security seriously than, let's say, somebody's a group of university students coming together to develop, you know, an affordable app to target maybe the small enterprises. And of course, most enterprises will go in for such solutions because it will be very easy for them to put out there. So in terms of fraud, I see a lot of cyber attackers focusing on this platform and phishing information, not just financial gain, but it could be, you know, for data and to conduct any other further attacks. So I think it's a conversation that should go down well to even the developers and everyone who is seeking to adopt this platform, so that security should be part of their consideration when they are considering this platform. And also they have to get the awareness as we are talking about here, which will inform their decision and also inform the frameworks that they are going to adapt to operate such business online. So in terms of the impact, I would say that from next year going, we would start recording incidents when it comes to e-commerce attack. And it will be significant. It will affect reputation of institutions. It will affect the financial aspect of it. And it could also affect the general economy. Okay, so that is what I can say. And that is my prediction for the upcoming years.
Anita, to add very quickly.
Yes.
So, I mean, typically when we talk of impact, we sort of reduce it to numbers, right? And like I said at the beginning of the call, cybersecurity, that whole eco space is estimated to be valued at 6 trillion. And so that's probably a number of, if not all of African countries put together, their GDP, just to give you an idea. But for me, as far as the impact is concerned, I also want to highlight what the perceptional issues are in our market here. So we can talk numbers. I mean, in Africa, it's estimated at probably 22 odd billion, etc. by 2022. But those numbers are interesting. But for me, what's more important is, as Phil said, And as Adoma has also mentioned, we're seeing a surge in online activity due to the pandemic. And this is obviously exciting for the e-commerce and the online ecosystem or ecospace. But potentially cyber attacks will derail or potentially can derail some of the gains we've made in this area. Because what will happen is that if a shopper or potential shopper gets bent once or twice, then there's less of an interest or a tendency to continue to do business online or to continue to do business with a particular vendor or a particular merchant. So for me, the biggest impact of fraud for online merchants in Ghana and their interest to make sure that it does not continue to grow is the fact that it threatens the opportunity created by surging numbers in online activity due to the COVID. So that's something we really need to pay attention to. Otherwise, we would actually lose, or all the gains that we've made in this area could potentially be eroded very, very quickly.
I agree with that. Okay, so I hope that's given some insight on that. I think you gave quite a number of tips when we looked at what you should consider. So we'll not look at that again. What I want to do now is come to you for your final thoughts before we wrap up. So starting with you, Philo, what will be your final thoughts? And then maybe 3 tips that online retailer listening to this would go away and make sure that they actually do in light of all what we've discussed this morning.
Thank you. But I want to say that though we are talking about cybercrime and it sounds scary, but it's something that has been with us for a very long time now. So if you are into e-commerce, you shouldn't be discouraged that because of cybercrime, you are going to go back to the traditional way of doing business. No, that is not it. There are several solutions. We have mentioned a lot of best practices that you can follow and still be able to survive these attacks. So the pandemic has also presented this opportunity in the cyberspace. And when you look at internet penetration now, it has increased. It tells you that a lot of people are now on the internet, and that is opportunity for us. So all that we have to do is that you have to just be conscious. You know, cyber security is a mindset. It starts from the mind. Okay, you have to make sure that it's part of every decision that you make. Procurement of tools, you know, updating of systems, any action that you take within your environment, you should just be security conscious and think about it. And some of these best practices that we have outlined here, you implement it, and I believe that you might not be able to address all the issues, but at least you'll be able to put in some mitigation measures to, you know, make sure that you are still profitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert.
My final words. So I'd first start with what I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, which is essentially the cybersecurity, cybercrime ecospace is worth 6 trillion. So you need to operate with the assumption that there are a number of people who have a vested interest in that ecospace and will continue to promote it. So we on the other side also need to do our bit to sort of keep it in check and make sure that one, as businesses, we don't have to spend too much protecting our business and make it less lucrative for people to play in that 6 trillion space. And this speaks to everybody, consumers, customers, the regulators, the law enforcement agencies, merchants, payment partners, the Visas, the MasterCards of this world. So it's really everybody's responsibility. The security concerns or the cybersecurity threats are not a one-man magic wand fix. Everybody has a role to play in the mix. And then also to add that, as I mentioned a few minutes earlier, that e-commerce companies, especially the ones we find around here, should opt for some kind of managed service or another so that they can focus on their business and let the technical people focus on the threats of cybersecurity. And then the last point would be that we should take the basic, precautions as individuals or as businesses to ensure that we don't become victims. And some of the tips, a lot of the tips have been shared. It includes having secure passwords, changing them frequently, and other rudimentary things like making sure your anti-spam, antivirus, etc. on your machines are updated and they're constantly updated for patches, etc., etc. So those would be my final words. To add to what Phil said, it's not going to go away anytime soon. It's been here with us for a while. It's not going to go anywhere soon. So we also need to sort of fortify ourselves and adequately position ourselves to not be victims of cyber threats.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you very much. So for me, what I have gathered from the conversation from our panelists is that the whole security issue in this area is a joint responsibility between the online merchant and also the customers. So it's a shared responsibility, and we talked about playing a role of educating our customers as well in order to ensure they also hold their part and keep themselves safe. And then also what has come out is that when we talk about security, it's not just about the revenue. Albert made that point at the beginning. We need to think about the other things that we stand to lose outside of loss of revenue, which were things like reputational damage to our brands, loss of traffic to our sites, which means, of course, that's not good for us, stealing of sensitive information, and then, of course, leveraging of control and power is all part of this security when we don't do anything about it. And then I also added that, you also have to look at your employees that are working with you, because these threats are not always just coming from outside, or if they are, some of these people do connect with your employees in order to do the fraud. So let's not forget the people element internally as well. And then there was a lot of tips, which of course we will share the link so you'll be able to go back and here we'll probably try and do a write-up to highlight some of those key recommendations that were made by the panelists on the basics that you should have in place to make sure that your site is safe for your customers to shop on. And we very much highlighted the fact that you should not just focus on the sales. You should make security part of your business planning, part of your strategy in the success of your e-commerce business. So in conclusion, I've kind of summed up here 10 points to take away. So making sure you select the right e-commerce platform, you achieve and maintain compliance with security requirements, sanity check with your site security, set up system alerts to screen suspicious activities. And these were some of the things I think Philo had mentioned, and that's what eCrime Bureau does for those of you who may want a bit more information how these things are done. Use tracking numbers for all your orders. Do not store sensitive customer or transaction data without protecting them. Require strong passwords from customers. We've mentioned that a lot. Educate staff on security and fraud protocol. This is very, very important. Create and maintain a file of past fraudulent transactions and attempts, and take security seriously. Make it a priority. And as Philo said, I want to highlight it that this is an opportunity. We are not talking about this to discourage. We are talking about this to strengthen you so that you will be able to benefit from the opportunity. These issues we're talking about affects whether you're in the UK, US, wherever you are running an e-commerce shop, you will face these challenges. It's not unique to Ghana or Africa, but we do have to look at it because our e-commerce industry is now growing, and because of the pandemic, is growing a bit faster. So we need to also take these things into perspective and do something about it in order for us to be successful in benefiting from these opportunities. So this is why we're talking about security, and we hope that we have managed to highlight the importance of you making it a priority in your e-commerce ventures. So I want to thank Albert, Adoma, and Philo for joining us today. Thank you so much. Your time is always very precious, and we always appreciate you honoring invitations when we bring them out to you. So thank you very much, Albert. Thank you, Philo. And of course, Adama had to leave us. We thank her as well. Of course, if you want to enjoy shopping, of course, you know the Zuba shop. And if you want more information to connect with Philo, if you let us know, we can connect you on with him. He's actually working for eCrime Bureau. And of course, to remind you to join the e-commerce association. As you can see with our webinars, we're trying to build very good content for you. We have a lot of good stuff for members. We intend to make this association a very successful, modern, dealing with issues and becoming a very good voice for the industry. So do join us if you haven't already. And of course, you can contact us under the contact information I've just put on here. So thank you very much to everybody for joining us today. And I look forward to our next webinar. I hope that you can join us. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Have a blessed day. Until the next time. Thank you. And bye. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.